All right, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to be talking about SQA3, which is how we solve by taking square roots. Now, this is not an incredibly difficult lesson, but there's a couple of pieces we want to be aware of. So when we come over here to problem number 1, we see that we have x squared is equal to 4. Now, when we get these problems, it's important to realize one thing. You can undo squaring something, which is what we do right here, by taking the square root of both sides. So we can undo this. Squaring and square root undo one another, just like addition and addition and subtraction do, or multiplication and division. Now, one thing to remember though is whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So this square root and square cancel each other off, and we're just left with whatever was inside, which in this case was x. And that's perfect because we wanted to get x alone. Now, when we take the square root of 4, we know that that answer is 2. Now, here's where it gets just a little tricky. Remember that when I say the square root of a number is 2, right, or the square root of 4 is 2, that means that 2 times 2, a number multiplied by itself, would be equal to 4. Now, we've always said the square root of 4 is 2, but we never talk about the other part of it. Think about it this way. Negative 2 times negative 2 is also equal to a positive 4. So the square root of 4 is not just 2, it's also negative 2. So we actually get two answers here. X equals 2 and x equals negative 2. Now this is what's going to happen on the majority of our problems today as we work through, is we're going to get two different answers. One of them will be positive and the other one will be negative. So let's take a look at another problem. So here's problem number 3. So in this situation, we want to get x alone, but we notice it's being squared. To undo squaring it, we want to take the square root of both sides. Now, when we do that, the square root and the square cancel each other off, meaning we're just left with x. Now, I don't know what the square root of 361 is, so that's where I'm going to go grab my calculator. On my calculator, I have the square root key. If you're struggling to figure out where the square root key is, mine is right here. Yours could very well be in a different spot. Please let me know if you can't find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'll type in second square root 361, and when I hit enter, it gives me the positive answer. And that's good. But we got to remember there's also a negative. So I should also say x equals negative 19. We need both of those answers if we are going to be correct, right? Remember, there's the positive and the negative version of those numbers. Let's look at problem number 5. Now on problem number 5, this one's a little bit harder yet. And the reason for that is this one has a 3 hooked on in front. Now, just like in almost all of mathematics, we need to unhook that 3. It's hooked on there by multiplication, so we're going to divide both sides by it to get rid of it. Those two pieces go away. And when I do that, that's going to leave me with just x squared over on that side. Now on the other side, 243 divided by 3 is 81. Once you get to this spot, it's important to realize you just need to get rid of the square. So we are going to take the square root of both sides. I think the hardest part about today is just remembering that there's always going to be two answers. So second square root 81 is 9. That's the positive answer. You can't forget about the negative one. The other one is x equals negative 9, and you're all done. Don't forget, should have two answers on almost every problem. We'll see if we get some unique ones, but I'm not so sure. Here's another one. Now I want to get x squared alone. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to divide both sides by negative 7. And when I do that, these two cancel off. So I'm just left with x squared is equal to 63 divided by a negative 7 is a negative 9. Now, when I come over here to undo the square root, I square root both sides. These two go away, and I'm left with x equals. Now, this is where we got to be a little careful. This problem's unique because right now, inside is a negative number. And hopefully what we remember is that we can't take the square root of a negative number. And even if we tried to do this on our calculator is going to yell at us. It's going to say no real answer because there's no answer to that. So when this happens and we end up seeing that the square root of a negative number, our response is, well, since this can't happen, we can't take the square root of a negative number, our answer is going to be no solution. There's no number that will make this true. And the reason, I know kids look at it all the time, is they say, well, what if it was 3 times negative 3? That equals negative 9. And you're correct, but remember, in order for us to say we can take the square root, both of these need to be the same, and these are definitely not the same, right? So that doesn't work, which is why there is no solution. Here's another one. Look at problem number 9. So first thing we want to do, we want to get x squared alone. So we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. That's going to leave us with x squared is equal to 10. Now, x squared is all by itself, so let's do some work. To undo the square, we're going to take the square root of both sides. Those two cancel out, and we're left with whatever's inside, which is just x. Now, on the other side, we have the square root of 10. So we're going to do second square root of 10. 10 is not a nice number to take the square root of, but we can still get a decimal approximation. So I'm just going to call it 3.16. Now, remember, when we do this, there's always two answers. So x is equal to positive 3.16 and negative 3.16. Those will be my two answers. Nice job. Let's look at problem number 11. Here's our next one. Remember, we need to get the x squared alone. That needs to be the first thing we do. So in this situation, let's add 3 to both sides. These two cancel out. I'm going to be left with 3x squared is equal to a positive 3. Now, at this point, we still need to get x squared alone. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. Notice how I'm not just taking the square root of both sides because I need to get x squared alone first. Those two pieces cancel off, and you're going to be left with x squared is equal to 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now, at this point, we want to take the square root of both sides. So I know that when I take the square root of something squared, they cancel off, and I'm just left with x here. Now, the square root of 1, this one tricks kids all the time. The square root of 1 is 1. So x equals 1 is our answer, but wait a minute, don't forget about the negative answer. So x equals positive 1 and x equals negative 1. Nice job, guys. Let's do another one. All right, so how about number 13? I think we're 2 more problems left. We're almost there. So if I look at problem number 13, notice how the x squared is already alone. So that means you can just jump right ahead and take the square root of both sides. X, these two pieces cancel off, so I'm just left with x. Now, the square root of 73, I don't think it's a nice number, but that doesn't mean that there's no solution. In this situation, look at our calculator. It gave us an answer. So we just take that answer. I'm just going to round it to 2 decimal places, so 8.54. And then don't forget, there's always 2 answers. One is positive, and the other one is negative. So these will be my 2 answers. Here's our last one today, number 15. So again, let's get x squared alone. So I'm going to start by adding 7 to both sides. I'm going to get 8x squared is equal to 193 plus 7 would be 200. Now, I want to get x squared alone, so I want to divide off the 8 on both sides. That's going to leave me with x squared equals 200 divided by 8 leaves us with 25. And then, to wrap it up, we want to just come over here and take the square root of both sides. The square root of 25, I know that one is 5. Don't forget though, there's always 2 answers, so x equals negative 5 is that other answer. And just like that, we're done, right? That's half of the problems for you. I hope your half goes just as quick. Remember, the one thing I want to point out that's always important is that you can't take the square root of a negative. If that ends up happening, you want to hit pause and say, I can even check it on my calculator if I want, but otherwise you need to realize that you can't do that, which is why our answer is going to be no solution. Thank you guys so much for watching the full video. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out and ask. Thanks, guys. Have a nice day.